Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I want to talk about how worthless common science continues to be. I've been listening to an awful lot lately, hours and hours, probably listening to 20, 30 hours of scientific talks on quantum this, quantum that, and science in general, and how lost scientists are. And they basically now are admitting it. Now, there's a few top scientists out there that are very popular. Carroll is one of them, who is pretty much a classical physicist, theoretical physicist, and has come to the proper conclusion. But, he's so delusional, so brainwashed that he doesn't understand why he doesn't get it. Another one is Leonard Susskind, who is an interesting guy whose father was a plumber with a 5th grade education, and he's a big theoretical quantum physicist now. And he's at the end of his rope as well. Someone who's a little more younger, not quite burnt out yet, Greene, doesn't really get what's going on either, and points out all the errors, basically, that he don't get it, that Einstein did. And we'll cover Einstein a little bit yet again, because, I keep finding out more and more things about him. But the bottom line is that there's a complete and total failure of science. The physicists have come to the end of their rope. They have discovered nothing. Jim Alexani, the British physicist, also stated in a recent documentary for BBC that we've discovered nothing in the last 100 years in physics. Now, we can also cover the famous Richard Feyman, and who basically turned everything. And the interesting thing is everybody is going to basically subtle energy physics. And of course, they're finding in the Higgs boson now energy field, which creates everything. Boson energy field creates it. Ooh, that reminds me of a Colton fuge. Well, the whole idea is here we go again. As usual, the manifesting occult sciences are always right and always will be, and they just don't get it. What's interesting is Feyman, who is quite a character, and you can find his talks on YouTube. Quite a comical little guy, and everybody liked him. He was a genius. He worked on the atomic bomb, has some kind of funny stories of his days on the atomic bomb project. He did assist along with so many. A lot of people think it was just Einstein. There's a whole group of people, God knows how many, were actually there working on that. It was very, very top secret. But what's interesting about Feyman, often called Feynman, I'm not sure why, but Fey, it's Feynman. Richard Phillips Feyman, I guess you pronounce it that way, who unfortunately died at a very young age. He probably should have spent time figuring out how to keep his body up. Unfortunately died of a horrible cancer at 69. But what he did, he was later known for the Feyman diagrams. Now, isn't that interesting? What did he do? What are the Feyman? Well, in theoretical physics, a Feyman diagram is a pictorial representation of a mathematical expression describing the behavior and interactions of subatomic particles. Would you know? I don't think many people get that. But, I'm very scientific in my outlook to things, because the problem, as much as we can, science is kind of a joke. So is mysticism, to the point of believing in funny men that came from virgins and rose from the dead. This kind of stupidity. And, of course, the other side of things is just as stupid as one side. But, science is a religion. And you don't go against that religion if you want to survive, if you're in the scientific church. So he introduced these diagrams in 1948. The interaction of subatomic particles can be complex and difficult to understand. Feynman's diagrams give a simple visualization of what would otherwise be an arcane and abstract formula. Wow. So basically he's making sigils to explain everything, and this in itself holds some energy. So here we go again, back to sigils, as I've discussed for many, many years, understanding the image reality that the mind works out of. The mind works from images, not language, not writing. It's all image-based. So if you want to get deep information into you, if you want to function on a high level, you have to, of course, make. And of course, what are numbers? Numbers are fictitious explanations anyway. So if you write down any physics or any mathematics to any great degree, what does it look like? Well, they're images. A 2 isn't a 2. It's an image of two things. So it could be 2 elephants, 2 cars, 2 whatever. So 2 is just a representation of that quantity of something, that number of something. Interesting. So here we get back, and I think it's very critical for subtle energy physicist students, for occult engineering students, to understand the fact of how this works, because that's what we're working with. We're not working with the backward, crappy physics, the physical nature of things. We're working with the energetic nature of things, and everybody needs to understand that. But apparently, they talk about the antimatter, and then there's energetic antimatter, that they talk about. So there's physical and energy based. Now they're starting to get into these things, which of course have been there as a representation forever. So they're moving towards energy, which they still consider physical, which it is, but not in their pea brain understanding of coming around to understanding this, or they're going to be hitting this horrible wall that they are. And this is exactly what's happened to physicists. And of course, you know, Einstein was the only breakthrough that's been in physics, and that was in 1920. So 100 years later, we have no breakthroughs, or not even any theories of great value. Apparently, this semi-retarded patent, so they claim, he was working in the patent office in Zurich, Switzerland, and then wrote some papers, and everybody said these are the greatest papers ever written. Which to myself, the whole story of Einstein is bizarre. He also married his cousin. He was a very odd guy. And certainly, we don't really know what to make of any of this when it comes to Einstein. He's so weird. He also was given a Nobel Prize. Einstein was given a Nobel Prize for quantum, I believe it was quantum mechanics. One of the quantums out there. He accepted a Nobel Prize and said, I don't believe any of it. What? How can someone write a paper like that, get a Nobel Prize? They should have given it to somebody who understood what they were doing. So, I mean, this is the kind of weird stuff we get from him. And it's really sad that physicists and science have to be so dependent upon Albert Einstein. They should be Abrams, the great radionic guy. So dependent on this guy that that's the only guy they have to go to. So it just amazes me that it keeps coming up. And how did they prove his all these proof of this going slower the faster you go, time slowing down? Well, they made light clocks. You know, you can't get those at Walmart. Apparently, it's some sort of fake goofball scientific clock that uses light of some sort. So again, we're proving something with a non-practical tool, something that they contrived so they could come out and make their theory work. So they use these things so they could measure such moderate changes by putting something on a plane and having it fly, and 1/10, 1/millionth of a billionth of a trillionth percent less did the clock move when you went at speed. So it's just ridiculousness of it, and they think this is proving it. Because after all, they have to do something instead of sitting around picking their noses and other holes. It's really pathetic. So the point is here they give a Nobel Prize to a guy who doesn't believe anything, saying, hey, he's such a genius writing the paper, when he didn't believe anything. So how can you possibly even write a good paper on something you don't believe. You're explaining something, I guess, which is better than others. So I guess he was a good writer. I have no idea. He was quite the character in so many ways, and there's so many odd things about him, and particularly his personal sexuality, married to his cousin. You can look that up online. Quite a unattractive person. And, of course, he didn't believe in monogamy anyway, so I guess that was a way he could rationalize going around nailing everything he could, which I personally am in favor of as well. But that's not the point. Now, we get down to, all of this comes down to the Higgs boson particle, which is gotten by smashing stuff together. The Hadron Collider. Do you know what a collider means? What happens when you collide with something? You hit it. You ran into it. So you get really fast speeds and you collide into it. Now, this is exactly what is done. So you bang things up, you smash it. Or as one person said, it's like figuring out what's in a car by getting cars of the same type, running them head on into each other and see what comes out of them. Well, you know, it's very interesting because it was very unlikely that you'd ever see what was really in a car by ramming the two together at super high speeds. You're assuming that that would turn into knocking all the parts out of the engine eventually so you could examine it? Well, that's science! They spent hundreds of millions of dollars on it. Okay. And, of course, it's obsolete now, and they need to get another 100. But it's interesting that Feyman, as most people pronunciate his name, turned everything into pictographs so people could understand it. Gee, when and where you heard that before? Well, now we get into other people who finally have come down to understanding that they are lost. One of them, of course, is Sean Carroll, who continues to not understand why he can't get it, and now has fed up the fact that he's a spokesman for science. He believes the basics, the core of science, fervently, by the way, disregards any other thought that is in his reality, which, how can you be a theoretical physicist and take other things? Even though he states that's not the case with him. He states he takes in other things, but he doesn't. He just stated in one of his many, many interviews and discussions that, I need to look into that. I'll have to read the skeptic's opinion of it. Well, what an ignorant buffoon he is. Like, that's an opinion? Like the skeptics are right? Like his fellow scientists, people who invented the laser and other many advanced technologies, don't know what they're talking about, but the skeptics, who are a bunch of criminal lunatics, and even the scientists, if there are any serious ones connected, are very low level. Not compared to the people that on the other end. He ignores their papers, their discoveries, and goes with these buffoonish idiots. Well, you're having trouble figuring out why science doesn't have any answers? Well, basically, Carroll, who is now quitting California Institute, the Institute of Technology, whatever the hell it is, the one in California, opposed to MIT. So, because it's not getting anywhere with him. It's the same old stuff all the time, and he stated the fact that basically it comes down to the point now, with the information that we have, is that all you can really do is guess. And his answer to that was, well, I don't think I can guess right. Now, he is correct. He doesn't want to believe. He wants to know, and rightfully so. But you're not going to know listening to the same people that gave you all the wrong answers and got you in the predicament you are. He wants to go out and expand himself. He believes in being more creative. But within this tiny little creative circle, and he keeps running around, he won't look outside his reality to other noted scientists to understand the nature of things. He has clearly stated on interviews that he is totally and completely against anything that is based in subtle energy physics, that there are no energies that come out that can bend spoons, even though it's been demonstrated thousands of times by noted people, from scientists to generals, and they're not good enough. They want to jump on poor old Uri Geller and say he's a fraud. Well, we don't need Uri Geller. We have General Stubblebine. We have noted scientists, hundreds of them, that have been able to do this in witnesses, and thousands of, probably tens of, maybe millions of people have bent spoons. It's not exactly difficult, Sean. Maybe you should look into that to understand the nature of reality, and that's not what you think it is. He understands reality as being a physical entity that he can put a tape measure. Yeah, it's 10 micrograms thick. He wants to think that everything is in there. That's what a physicist is, the physical. But it's a misnomer. It's stupid. Well, he's trapped now. He's leaving Caltech and going out on his own to communicate science to the world, and unfortunately, his own strange and warped. Now, you're never going to get anywhere, Sean, until you start thinking differently and getting out of the brainwashed reality that you're in. It's sad to see that, because you seem to vacillate from, well, I'm open to, well, I'm going to read a... Since when are skeptics open to anything? And why would you read one side? Well, that's what you're doing now, Sean. You're on one side of the scientific book, or pole, or whatever you want to call it, street, and you can't figure out how to get to the other side. Well, that's right. And fortunately, you make enough money from your books and all your media not to be in an institution any longer, as you have stated yourself. So, and I'm not sure how, I think Sean's in his 50s or something. Brian Greene is a younger man, I'm assuming he's in his 40s, who talks about Einstein and all these other things, pretty much an MC for a lot of scientific stuff. And he recently talked about Einstein and showed his original theory that we know as MC equals square, whatever it is. But when you saw what Einstein wrote, it was completely different. And he looked at it and said, well, I don't know, I don't really understand what this is. Oh, did everybody clean up the semi-retard Einstein's work? Because apparently his original math didn't have that actual formula that we know is so famous. Was that changed yet again? Because, you know, Einstein made numerous problems. His math was constantly wrong. He did all sorts of things wrong and kept changing and changing, and then was held up after changing something 50 times. The end result was then held up as being great. Well, I guess that's all that counts if you get the end result, but how much of that was end resulted by someone else? Well, even Brian Greene doesn't know. He looked at his equation, his original equation, and was kind of stumped by it. Didn't even quite understand what it meant. Well, I thought it meant E equals MC squared, whatever it is, and a wrapper and a dish and a dat. I mean, now the other one, who is the... pretty much another noted theoretical physicist. And, you know, I've always had problems with theoretical anything because I find that to be a really pathetic. And that's Leonard Susskind, whose family was plumbers. His father only got a 5th grade education. He somehow was able to overcome all these things, he was interested in it and was able to handle the math, etc. He is now 80 years old, so he's at a time in his life where he's wondering if anything he did was any value, and that's right. That's right, Leonard. Is anything you did have any value? And so he's at that point that he has admitted in his different talks that, well, we've achieved nothing. We've learned nothing new. We keep thinking and thinking. We keep exploring, and nothing comes from it. The Hadron Collider was supposed to produce lots of results, and it didn't, and it's still not doing anything. Of course, they need a longer one. They need one thing that'll blow things up more. Everything is theoretical and thinking, and what does that mean? It doesn't come into anything of important reality. So where are we yet again? Well, we're in the world, and they admit it themselves now, and I like to hear that. Susskind is stating that, well, we don't know anything more than we knew before. And this goes back to, sadly enough, not just 100 years ago to Einstein, which is the only thing they can hold up as anything new, but this goes back 500 years, all the way back to original physics, Newtonian physics, which is pretty sad. It's pretty sad that everything is still based on Newtonian principles or Newton's principles, which is quite amazing. So, Everything goes back. We haven't learned much. All the basic theories are still there. Nothing has happened in the last 100 years. We had one guy write a few papers called Einstein that apparently impressed a bunch of people with his theories that were never proven. He also Einstein didn't believe in black holes, didn't believe in gravitational waves, didn't believe in a lot of things that are now known in science to be 100% factual. So the guy made a hell of a lot of mistakes and was off. And a lot of people don't understand that even Stephen Hawking, the big black hole pusher, claims that black holes just disappear, by the way. A lot of people are under the impression that black holes sit there forever and they just keep sucking things in and they're there for billions of years. Well, I don't know how long the black holes, but per Stephen Hawking's, black holes disappear. They appear and they disappear, which makes them almost interdimensional in realities. But this is a statement from Mr. Black Hole himself. Then we go into all sorts of people, and of course he is now passed. We had Carl Sagan, who is now passed as well. But Carl Sagan had a whole list of judging things if they were pseudoscience or not. And what's interesting is that to cover himself, and this is what dumb bunkers and idiot skeptics are doing now, is following some of Sagan's guidelines. Well, what's interesting is I believe on this, there's 10 of them or whatever, who cares? There are, one of them is don't trust experts. What? Well, this is very interesting because they are going to, these dumb bunkers and idiot skeptics are going to run into official people that are top grade professionals in their field that they are going to debunk the debunkers, which is happening already. There are plenty of people out there that don't agree with traditional science who are well-qualified, noted, papered professors and have PhDs. How do you counter them? Well, they're one of those experts that we don't bother with. What a convenient out. So pick the experts that agree with you so you're always right. So that's basically what it comes down to. It's very, very interesting when you see these realities of what they're saying. So this is the hollowness of science. Physicists know, and how couldn't you, that they have no answers to anything. Almost any of them, all of them, I should say, admit this in one form or another. The idol they've kept called Einstein has got so many flaws it isn't even funny. And all of the rest of science has failed. And this includes the quasi-science, which is really not a science, but engineering. Well, I'm not sure what engineering has done past the con. Now, we've done some amazing structures, built tall buildings, tunnels under the water. Well, this is all amazing engineering feats, and these can't be berated. On the other hand, so many things that we make don't work. They break easily. They're poorly engineered. They're poorly designed. So while you can test engineering because, hey, if you put up a building and it falls down, well, you failed. So you don't see too much of that. So, but when we get into any other kind of, quote, science, medical science, energy science, well, it's all a failure. There are no medical cures for anything, even things as simple and as problematical as dandruff, which is nothing more than a bacteria. There is no cure for that. Why? So we get into all these things. Energy, it's still the same thing. We're dealing with energy generation that goes back 150 years generally. Nuclear power, burning oil. This is a failed science. We have better ways, yet they're not being used, or maybe there aren't better ways. Maybe the scientists have failed yet again. So I hope everybody understands the pathetic reality, and to think that something is going to come out that's going to work, a lot of that has to do even with today. To think that the same failed medical people are all of it going to have a cure or a vaccine for something today is the height of stupidity. Well, where were they before? Where's the vaccines for all the other problems we have? Why all of a sudden they have a vaccine for something you can't make a vaccine for, which is a flu, because it mutates every single year or almost all the time. So why would that possibly work? Yet filling a lot of pockets up, it's giving a placebo to the idiot mass public, But it is not science, and they haven't. If they haven't been able to cure anything, we have no cures, and we have people dying in greater and greater numbers because antibiotics are failing, because they're overused or whatever the problem is. Maybe the illnesses are a lot stronger than we anticipated them being. So the whole idea is that science is a failure. We support it. We support losers. We give trillions of dollars to medical research that produce nothing. It goes on and on as we destroy this planet and everything on it. And we can also thank so many other people for supporting the stupidity that is nothing more than horrible corruption. And that's really what it comes down to. I mean, why are we supporting stuff that doesn't work? Why are we supporting all these sciences who have achieved absolutely nothing? What have they done? Absolutely nothing, right down to NASA, who can't even get a rocket in the sky anymore because they based everything on some psycho-Nazi that they had in the space program. So the whole idea is that what is going on here, people? Wake up and understand the fallacies on here, and do not support these losers, the medical losers, and all the scientific losers who brought us nothing. Where are the answers, theoretical physicists? As you know, there are no answers in your thinking, and never will be. Until next time.